Hello guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing great. I hope everyone is having a great weekend. I have been sitting on a sample set that I am finally deciding to talk about in today's video from the house of Carine Roitfeld. I have here a sample set that includes 5 fragrances. So the house of Carine Roitfeld, I think, was initially only available in Europe and came to the US about a few years ago. And I own 3 full bottles at this point. I've owned them for at least 6 months. And this sample set here has 5 samples, and there are some fragrances that are not included in the sample set that I myself am curious about, that I've never gotten my nose on. So for those of you that are familiar with the house of Carine Roitfeld is the ex-editor-in-chief of French Vogue. She's also an ex-model in the fashion industry for a very long time, and I think a few years ago, at least 2 years ago, she came out with the house of Carine Roitfeld and introduced these wonderful fragrances. I really enjoy the fragrances in this house. I don't necessarily love all of them, but I think the ones that I do like, the ones that I do own, are really well made. There are some great perfumers behind some of these fragrances, including Vladimir, who is the master of florals. So let's start with the samples. And the first one that we'll talk about is George, a Jan Vosnier creation. He's the perfumer behind this fragrance. I wore this the other day at work. I really enjoyed this one. So this is a big galbanum green fragrance, and it really is a nod and reminiscent of classic, almost vintage style perfumery. I'm not saying vintage in the sense that it smells out of date. It definitely doesn't smell like an outdated fragrance, but this sort of mossy green galbanum is definitely reminiscent of fragrances like Chanel's No. 19, and is even compared to something like Chanel's Cristal, which is a fragrance from the 70s. I actually purchased a vintage bottle of the EDT finally, and something like that has to be a blind buy because I purchased an older version of the fragrance. So I have no idea what it smells like, but it is compared, or this is compared to something like Cristal from the house of Chanel. This is really nice. It's, like I said, green galbanum. There's a freshness to it. There's a mossiness. There is oak moss in here as well. What I like is that there's a freshness to the fragrance. This would make for a very nice, maybe spring and summer fragrance. So this one has cannabis. That's right, this is the one with cannabis as well. So there's something almost a little camphoraceous that comes along with the green. Cannabis can be a little bit camphoraceous, and it is in here, but it's not overwhelming. And there's also a violet leaf absolute in here. I think there's jasmine, there's rose, but it's not really coming off like a floral fragrance. It's mostly about the greenery in here. It's mostly about the galbanum. It's mostly about the oak moss. And if you could imagine classic, almost vintage style fragrance, that's what this is reminiscent of. But in a modern, there's a freshness to this. So it's really nice. It's well done, I think, in my opinion. It's nicely done. I wore this to work the other day, and I enjoyed it. But it would be reminiscent of Chanel No. 19 for me. Not reminiscent, it would be redundant in my collection. So I would not go for a full bottle, but if you like what it sounds like and you like Chanel No. 19, then maybe you want to try this one. So that's George. So the next one that we're going to talk about, I think, is pretty popular. The perfumer behind this one is Pascal Guerin, and this is Vladimir. I think this is a popular one. I was not too crazy about this one. This is not one of the ones that I own. This one, I think, is supposed to be an iris fragrance, an iris scented fragrance, and I just don't really get it. I get something really fresh. I know there's bergamot at the top. There's something powdery, but I'm not really detecting iris in here. So this has bergamot, cedar, and amber. Frankincense, there's also grapefruit, geranium, and sage. There's iris and leathery notes as well. So I remember when I was testing this, making notes about not detecting anything leathery whatsoever. So if anyone thinks that this is an iris leather fragrance, it's definitely not. As this dries down and it gets through that freshness from the grapefruit and the bergamot, what you get is a woody fragrance. To me, the cedar wood in here becomes prominent, and maybe any iris that's in here is in the background, going sort of powdery but not really detectable. It just wasn't what I expected. I expected an iris slash possibly leathery fragrance. Maybe that's what I heard, or that's what I read, or that's what I expected from looking at the note breakdown. So this one was a little bit of a disappointment. As it's warming up on the blotter, I'm getting a lot of the woody components. It's definitely a woody fragrance in the end, and not an iris fragrance to me. There is a freshness to it, and there is a little bit of sweetness. It is creamy, but it's all about the cedar. It's like a fresh take on cedar, maybe with a hint of something powdery from iris. So that's Vladimir. So the next one that we'll talk about is called Carine, and this is also created by perfumer Pascal Garin, the same person who is the nose behind Vladimir. This was also not one that I went for a full bottle of. I'm saving the best for last. This one I would say I liked the least because I detect synthetic sort of amber woods in here. Yeah, I detect some of those synthetic notes that are used in a lot of modern perfumery that I really don't get along with. So at first, to me, this comes off like a musky, rosy fragrance. I was getting sort of almost like a watery, musky hint of rose in here with green. And then as it warms up, there's a tea accord in here that starts to come through, as well as the osmanthus. So you have this sort of apricot-y, fruity hint. You have this sort of darkness from, a little bit of smoky darkness from this tea. And then maybe the osmanthus goes a little bit textured as it dries down. I had this on skin the other day, and I was definitely realizing that as this fragrance dries down on skin, it moves away from that sort of musky, clean green opening and dries down to something a little bit darker with the osmanthus coming through. Little bit fruity, but nothing super bright and super sweet. It darkens, and that's when the sort of synthetic, maybe amber woods start to come into play as it dries down. And it comes off like a textured, almost apricot-y, tea-like fragrance that's not too dark. If you like the idea of osmanthus and tea and woody components, you might appreciate this. But I was not a fan of this one. I think this is my least favorite, so that's Carine. So now let's move on to one that I do have a full bottle of, and this is Carine. And this one comes in the clear bottle. A lot of them, I think, come in the smoky, almost dark green, blackish bottle, although Forgive Me is in a dark purple bottle. So this one, as far as I know, is the only one that comes in a clear bottle. The juice looks green. So this is Carine, and this is obviously named after Carine Roitfeld. The perfumer behind this one is Dominique Ropion. I know this one fairly well. There's a very, very tiny dent, but I do know this one fairly well. I went through most of the decants. I wore this the other night out to dinner. Really enjoyed it. My friend asked me what I was wearing, so I received a compliment. So I would describe Carine as a classic floral fragrance. There's jasmine, there's rose, there's gardenia in here, and it's contrasted with these spices and with patchouli and cardamom as well. And I think the peppery spices in here give me the impression that the fragrance has sort of a musky, almost sharp edge to it. The patchouli definitely darkens the gardenia and the rose and the jasmine, so that it's not coming off like an ethereal, necessarily super feminine fragrance. I think there are a lot of men that appreciate Carine and wear Carine. It's a fantastic fragrance, and I think Dominique Ropion did a beautiful job. It is not my favorite of the three that I own, but I do think it's a fantastic fragrance. The florals are perfectly darkened by this patchouli, and the pepper notes in here, there is pink pepper, spices, as well as Madagascan pepper, and there's also cardamom. So there are enough peppery and aromatic notes together with this patchouli that sort of perfectly contrasts the florals in here, so that, like I said, you have this sort of sexy, dampened take on this rose, gardenia, jasmine combination in this perfume. It's really great. It's really sexy. To me, it's a fragrance that I like wearing when I'm going out. It's not something that I think of as a fragrance to wear to work. There's nothing wrong with wearing it to work, but I like wearing this one to go out. I'm just going to spray it on my left hand here. The sprayer on this one is a little damaged. It's intoxicating, and the lingering power of this fragrance, it is very long lasting. The sillage is really high up there with this fragrance, so I feel like this one can be oversprayed. It can be overwhelming if you spray too much on. It's so great how the florals are sort of peeking through this darkness from the patchouli, and the spices, it's just perfectly balanced. So it's not a delicate floral. It's a dirtied floral, and at the same time, there's sort of a nod to classic perfumery, I think, with this one. So I really like this. Again, it's not my favorite of the three. I saved the best two for last, but I really do enjoy this one. So that's Carine. So the next one is Aurelien. This one is in the sample set. I have right here the sample. I went through a lot of this, even though I purchased Aurelien as a blind buy before I purchased the sample set. So I purchased this one, was really, really impressed. I heard great reviews about this. I purchased it blindly, was very impressed, and that's what made me purchase the sample set rather than continue to blind buy Carine Roitfeld fragrances. So this one, Aurelien, I am assuming is named after Aurelien Guichard, who is the perfumer behind this fragrance, and he is the founder and the perfumer behind the Matière Première fragrances. And this one is all about contrast. It's an orange blossom fragrance that is taken into a perfectly dark direction. There is myrrh in here, there's amber, there's Papanax. So it is ambery and resinous, and it is taking this orange blossom, which is a sweet, fresh note in fragrance, can be fresh, can be sweet, floral as well. It's taking it and contrasting it into this beautifully darker direction, but not too dark. So it's right in the middle. It's not a fresh orange blossom. It's not a sweet, super floral orange blossom. On the other hand, even though there's myrrh in here and amber, it's not going into a super dark direction. It is perfectly bringing the orange blossom to a very nice middle ground and darkening the fragrance, darkening the orange blossom in a way that is so enjoyable. I really do love this one. It's one of my favorites from the house, although there are a few that I want to try, like Orson. Orson is supposed to be a sort of almost tropical fragrance, I believe, a fresh fragrance with ylang ylang. I passed on a really good sale. Bloom Perfumery from London. I've purchased from them before. Actually, I think I purchased Aurelien and Carine from Bloom Perfumery, and they had a really good deal on Orson. It would have been a blind buy. I passed, and they sold out. So I'll have to sample that one. Oh, this is so beautiful. It is such a beautiful take on orange blossom. So this is orange blossom, benzoin, there's also jasmine in here, a Papanax, amber, there's myrrh, and there's patchouli. So again, it is a beautiful take on this orange blossom slash jasmine white floral fragrance, and it is a beautiful fragrance to wear. Nice lingering power, nice long-lasting fragrance. I think the three that I own, from what I've experienced, they perform really well. Very enjoyable, beautiful fragrances. So if you appreciate orange blossom in fragrance and you want a twist, a darker, ambery, sort of resinous, richer take on orange blossom, perfect for the fall, actually, come to think of it, I would give Aurelien a try. Very, very well done by Aurelien Guichard. I love this one. It's beautiful. And last but not least, my favorite, Forgive Me. So this is not part of the sample set. This one I think was released about a year ago, but I'm not sure. This is a Dominique Ropillon creation as well. This is absolutely beautiful. Ranking the three that I own between Carine, Aurelien, and Forgive Me, this one comes out number one, Aurelien a close second, and then Carine in third place. So Forgive Me is another floral fragrance similar to Carine in the sense that it's a floral fragrance taken into a little bit of a darker direction with a contrast that makes the fragrance sort of sexy and gives it an edge. All of them, I feel like, the three that I own, I feel like are reminiscent of classic floral perfumery with a modern sort of interpretation. So this one is Orange Blossom, Gardenia, Tuberose, and Ylang Ylang. So it's this beautiful, creamy, white floral fragrance. This is creamier than Carine. Carine has that sort of sharpness to it. I'm calling it sharpness. It could be coming from the peppery notes. It's a dispersive fragrance. It shouts at you. It's a little more in your face. I feel like I said, can be oversprayed and can be a little bit overwhelming, nonetheless beautiful. This one is a creamier white floral composition. It is contrasted with patchouli, perfectly contrasted with patchouli. I love this fragrance. Another compliment getter. When I wore this, I went out with my sister and she did ask what I was wearing when I got in the car, and this was the fragrance. The patchouli is not anything super soily, dark, or earthy. It just perfectly complements this beautiful, creamy, floral fragrance in here to give it a little bit of a contrast, to give it a little bit of an edge. And what you're left with is a beautiful fragrance that has maybe a little bit of sweetness when you compare it to something like Carine that has almost no sweetness. This one has just a hint of something a little bit sweeter, while Carine has almost no sweetness to my nose. So this is beautiful. This is a little bit more innocent maybe than something like Carine. To me, Carine is more bold and sexy, while this one is sexy because the florals are being darkened with this patchouli, but sexy in a different way. Maybe sexy in a way where the person seems innocent but then has a sexy edge. That's what Forgive Me is, while Carine is maybe someone who's more in your face and doesn't hide that they're sexy and strong. But this one is beautiful. This is my favorite one of the three that I own. So that is my take on the Carine Roitfeld fragrances in the sample set and the three that I own. Like I said, Orson is one that I'd love to get my nose on. I'm not sure if there are any new releases that I'm not aware of. I'll have to look that up. So I would say overall that I'm really impressed with the House of Carine Roitfeld. Very well done fragrances. I feel like a lot of them are almost a nod to classic perfumery taken in a modern direction, totally relevant with high quality ingredients, and the three that I have I'm enjoying. So let me know in the comments if you guys are familiar with any of these fragrances, what you guys think of the House of Carine Roitfeld, and as always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time, bye guys.